Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers. Now, if you've been watching closely, you'll know that Garmin recently stirred the tanks on its two big hitting Forerunners, the 570 and the 970. And in this video, we're going to get into the nitty gritty on the pricier, more premium new Forerunner 970. This is the successor to the 965. It boosts its credentials as a less rugged alternative to the Fenix series, mainly by grabbing some features and hardware from its chunkier stablemate, but it's also bringing some of its own tools into the mix as well. The watch is built tougher, it has a brighter display, it packs the latest heart rate and GPS sensors and technology. The popular front-facing flashlight is here now as well. It also serves up some new running smarts, including running economy and running tolerance. It comes with a much bigger price tag though, so is it all worth it? Well, let's get into it in our Garmin Forerunner 970 multi-tester review. Now, before we get into the testing and the verdict, we're going to give you a quick whistle stop of what's new. There's quite a lot here on this watch, so we're going to pick out the highlights. Now, the Forerunner 970 is the sleek successor to the 965. The case size remains at 47mm, but the watch is a smidge thinner and a lot more expressive. There are three different colour variants, all with a lightweight titanium bezel, but come in slightly different finishes. Now, the 970 borrows several upgrades straight from Garmin's Adventure Tier Fenix 8 series. You've got a bright 1.4-inch AMOLED display that seriously punches up the brightness. You've got a scratch-resistant sapphire crystal lens, which improves the protection from the Corning Gorilla Glass 3DX that you had on the 965. Oh, and it now includes the hugely popular built-in front-facing LED torch, just like its bigger Fenix sibling. It's ever so slightly heavier, up to 56 grams versus the 965's 53 grams. The water resistance stays at 50 meters, so that's all the same. Inside the watch, it now packs the new Elevate Gen 5 optical sensor with medically certified ECG capability and skin temperature readouts. There's also all systems multi-band SatIQ GPS with a different and updated chipset to the 965. The UI has been revamped. It's now similar but not identical to the Fenix, but basically set up to allow for quicker access to menus and features. In terms of features, this now offers the most comprehensive suites of Garmin tools up there with the Fenix 8 across training, racing, recovery, health and smartwatch smarts. Retains things like full colour offline maps with some improved presentation in that. Some updates for triathletes and iron people. You will now get multi-sport structured workouts and a new Garmin triathlon coach. Then for runners, there's some other new metrics as well. Running economy uses long-term running volume, stride length and step speed loss. That's a new metric we'll come to in a sec to estimate your overall running efficiency. There's impact load. This tries to count the true cost of your runs, flagging an increased load if that 10k sort of you did was at a higher intensity or sent you up steeper hills. So you get sort of an impact load distance as well as your actual distance, like an estimate of how much you've had to pay for that run you did. There's running tolerance, which is a recommended weekly maximum mileage. It's based on a baseline from recent training and it's essentially an estimate of how much your body can take without risking injury. We mentioned step speed loss. This is sort of how much you slow down when your foot hits the ground. It's like it's one of those sort of cadence vertical oscillation type metrics. There are some new race tools as well. Auto lap by timing gates is an interesting one. This snaps you to the actual kilometre or mile markers on official courses, provided you've got a route to load where those virtual markers have been logged. Essentially, this giving you pace set to the official markers, because those splits only happen when you actually pass the official mile or kilometre marker on the course. So it takes out that kind of weaving mystery that gets thrown in. There's a suggested finish line feature that spots when you've forgotten to stop your watch post-race in all the medal getting furore. That'll remind you that you haven't, but it'll also suggest a portion of the road data to cut. There's also a new projected race time predictor. This is an estimate of what your race time and pace could be if you keep training well all the way through to a race date. So you'll have had to plug in a race date for that. Some of these you're also going to need the new HRM 600 chest strap to unlock. Outside of your runs, there's a new evening report. This is a bit like the Garmin morning report, but it sort of gives you feedback at the end of the day with things like sleep guidance, what your sleep need is based on what you did today, some updates about what you've got coming up tomorrow. When it comes to smartwatch smarts, there's a new speaker and microphone which powers voice tools like offline voice control, some voice commands. You can do on-wrist calls, talk to your watch, but you'll need a connected smartphone. There's still no cellular here. You're also getting the usual suite of Garmin tools like NFC payments, offline music with Spotify that you can now listen to through the speaker on the watch if you want to, Garmin Messenger, Live Track, Find My Phone, all those things are here. An interesting one, on paper the battery life is a bit of a mixed bag. You've got some improvements, some drops. You now get up to 15 days in smartwatch mode. That's down from 23 on the 965. 26 hours GPS only, which is down from 31 on the 965. 21 hours in all systems dual frequency, which is up from 19 on the 965. The GPS plus music battery life is up across the board, 12 to 14 hours depending on your GPS setting. That was 8 to 10.5 on the 965. Now, most of the drops in battery you're going to be paying for with that extra bright screen, and you can offset some of those by tweaking the settings and not having on full brights. So it does sort of minimize those changes in some places. Finally, on price, the Forerunner 970 leaps up from $59999 to $7,499, and from £49999 in the UK to £62999, so £630 in the UK.
So my likes with the Forerunner 970 start with its design, which has seen a lot of upgrades compared to the Forerunner 965. You've got the brighter screen to start with, which is great. It's really bright to the point where I've had to turn it down to the minimum brightness because I'm trying to improve the battery life a little bit, and it's still very bright in that setting. So yeah, really clear and easy to read in all conditions. That's also true of the screen on the Forerunner 965, but a brighter screen is never a bad thing. Then the hardiness improvement of having that sapphire crystal display, I think, is really important, because that was one of my gripes with the Forerunner 965. I scratched it during testing. I think some of the other guys did as well. It was pretty easy to scratch if you didn't use a screen protector, which obviously would be one way to fix that, but the sapphire crystal display is a notable upgrade. You've also got the built-in flashlight, which is very handy, the mic and speaker, the Gen 5 heart rate sensor, which I haven't used that much because I've been using the HRM 600 chest strap with the watch a lot, but that is a really accurate heart rate sensor. Like in all the watches I've been testing lately and have tested over the past couple of years, the Garmin Elevate Gen 5 sensor has always been very reliable for a range of runs. So yeah, it's a lot of design improvements, and they've all been achieved whilst keeping the watch nice and slim and lightweight. It feels very comfortable on the wrist, and that's the big difference to something like the Fenix. And you've now got that sapphire crystal display and the flashlight like you get on the Fenix line, but in a lighter watch that's more comfortable on the wrist for me, especially if you put a nylon band on it, which I prefer to do. This is just one off eBay, but there are obviously Garmin UltraFit bands and that kind of thing. And the updates mean that you're getting a very hardy and durable watch in a lightweight, slim package. Then in terms of some other likes on the watch, I do like the new features they've added to the watch in general, in particular running tolerance. Now, I really like this as a feature because it's a really good way of showing runners the impact of their runs on the body, because lots of runners, including myself, look at mileage each week. Obviously, I have a coach setting my plans, so I'm not trying to increase it myself or anything like that, but if you are working to mileage, which is a common way to work, you have to increase it a little bit each week, not go too sudden with your increases in mileage. And the running tolerance feature does that, but also takes into account how hard your runs are. I think that's really important, because I'm not someone who's ever really been a very, very high mileage runner, but I tend to do a lot of pretty hard training. Like the balance of my training load when marathon training has quite a lot of reasonably hard runs, and it's good that this feature shows the impact of hard runs is different to easy runs, because they do have more impact on the body. And so, for example, when I did a 10k race whilst wearing the watch, it flagged up as 15k of running. And I think putting it in mileage terms, well, it's always going to be fairly inexact how it converts, a hard kilometre versus an easy one. It does give a very simple metric to look at and go that, well, actually, I might have only run 80 kilometers this week, but the impact on my body is more like running 110 kilometers a week and that kind of thing. And it means you're just taking into account the difficulty of your runs as well as just the total miles. So I do like that as a new feature. The running economy stuff I think is interesting. Like, I was really excited about this when I learned about it at launch. It's kind of so far been interesting, but not that interesting. I've got my running economy measurement. The step slow rate has been interesting at times during races, how it's changed slightly over the course of a race, but I tend to notice it doesn't change that much in terms of my step speed loss percentage in a way. There might be a useful metric going forward in the future, in that, if you're improving your running economy over time by doing more miles, by doing more structured training, it'll be another way to use your watch to measure your progress. But yeah, running tolerance is the feature I like the most for sure, and that's the one that doesn't require the Garmin HRM 600 strap, which is obviously an added expense that you need to pay to get running economy. And then last like would be that the accuracy has been really great with the Forerunner 970 in terms of the GPS accuracy, which I've tested at a couple of races and obviously lots of training runs, produced very accurate GPS track. And although I haven't used the heart rate monitor very much because I have been using the HRM 600 chest strap, like I say, the Gen 5 sensor is really good. On a couple of runs where I haven't used the chest strap, it's been very accurate. So you're going to get a really accurate experience, really in-depth sports tracking, great navigation features as always, the usual Garmin pros, all in a watch that has quite a significant design upgrade all round, I'd say.
So into those likes, and I do really like the design of the 970. I really liked the look of the 965. I was hoping it didn't change too many things, and that's that's kind of what we've got here. It's really about kind of upgrading things slightly. It's the same case size. I do think there is an argument for Garmin to maybe introduce a smaller case size here. They have done it for the 570. They've done it for other ranges in their line. So why not for the 900 series? I think maybe going forward that would be a good addition to the range. You are getting a brighter display. It is notably brighter than one of the 965. I think even when you've not got it at that kind of max brightness setting, you do have that ability to control the brightness level as well, which I think is really important here. And then we've got that LED flashlight, which I think, I will hold my hands up and say I thought this was a bit of a gimmick when Garmin first introduced it, but it's amazing how useful I actually have found it kind of now that I've, used it on other watches, used it on the 970. Other things I think I want to talk about, the run tracking performance has been very good. That multi-band GPS mode is as strong as it ever has been on the kind of, on a Garmin watch, and that's what you're getting here on the 970. The heart rate monitoring performance has been very solid for me. We've moved to that kind of later kind of Gen 5 Elevate sensor, and I think that's really kind of improved things in terms of that performance, and it's looked pretty solid in my kind of running time. The other thing I want to talk about is running metrics. Now, I definitely would say that Garmin's been a bit hit and miss with the new running metrics that it's offered over the last few years, and actually the one that doesn't require that additional heart rate monitor chest strap is the one that I think is the most interesting. That is the running tolerance metric, which is based on kind of impact load and really trying to give you a better sense of whether you're kind of sticking to the mileage that you really should be, whether you're upping it too quickly. This has been ideal for me where I am coming back from injury. I'm trying to better manage my load, but also make sure that I'm hitting the kind of the mileage that I should be hitting. And I could see when I was overdoing it, it was quite clear to see that I was probably trying to do too much or trying to raise that volume. And when it kind of started to kind of level out, I could see that quite clearly. And I think that is a feature that for a lot of runners are going to find a useful addition, more so than the running economy and the kind of step speed loss metrics that we are seeing introduced with the 970 as well.
So before I get into the things that I really like about this, generally I'd just like to say I think the 970 builds nicely on the foundations of the 965. This is a watch that's an evolution with smaller refinements, but there are some highlights that get a high approval rating from my corner, starting with that big bright screen, which is excellent. It's bright, it's easy to read in all lights, and it's just wonderfully crisp and colourful. Brings all of those stats that Garmin now offers, all the charts and the mapping tools, of which there are a multitude on this watch. It just brings them really to life. It's a big improvement on the Forerunner 965, and I found that even punches above the Fenix 8 AMOLED screen, even in the lower brightness modes on the 970, so you can eke out a bit more battery life. Now, the tougher sapphire screen is also an improvement over the 965. 965 screen scratched too easily on mine. I got a big hack down the middle of it, and so far this one seems to be more resilient. No problems on that front yet. The flashlight, got to talk about that. That's a big tick. Once you've had the front-facing torch in the Fenix 8 or whatever, you miss it in a watch that doesn't offer it. It's great to see this come down. And the fact that Garmin have got that squeezed into the hardware without sacrificing too much battery life or making the watch much more bulky. The other thing, I love the customization of Garmin devices, and the Forerunner 970 adds to that. There's loads of control over the info that's really pertinent to you in the glances, but also in the mid-run data screens, and in what you set there, and the battery power modes as well. You've got dozens and dozens of color combos to choose from for your screens as well. Now, in terms of running and training tools, I don't think you'll find a more comprehensive offering among the rival watches. Obviously, a lot of them are coming at a slightly lower price, but there's a lot here. I'd say there's probably enough here to rival the Fenix if you want a pretty full capability, but in a smaller, lighter, more compact design. How many of those tools and insights you'll actually use will be very subjective, but from training to racing, health to navigation, there is a lot on this watch. Of the new metrics, the one that really chimed most with me, I think, was running tolerance. I think it's a really interesting metric that's kind of trying to estimate what your body can take, but just put it into a simple kind of mileage number. In my tests, suggests that I've got some headroom on a weekly mileage basis. I think and I tend to agree with that. I kind of doing 50-mile weeks, but it sort of said I could probably do 70. But there's a caveat to this. I'd strongly suggest using it as a guide with a lot of caution. There's a part of me that worries that this might lead people to see the bigger mileage number as a target and push too hard. So yeah, I'm doing 50-mile weeks, and Garmin says I could hit 70. But I don't think I'd go for the 70 straight out. and try and hit that big number straight off. I'd sort of try and ease my way up to it a bit. Now, the finish line prompt is also a great addition, the kind I like. It's sort of simple, solves a genuine problem, helps you if you forget to stop your watch, which I've done. The mic and speaker and voice tools are an interesting addition. I think particularly the ability to take calls on your watch when paired with a phone. Regular runs week to week or day to day, I don't really tend to take calls when I'm running. It's sort of my time to shut off. But when I'm 60 miles deep into an ultra and I want some moral support, I sometimes reach for my phone to try and get a pep talk. And I think this would be a welcome addition that might make that a bit easier. I could get people to call me in and just have a quick chat through the watch. Accuracy, I found the heart rate and GPS was nicely reliable. The optical has been as good as any other optical that I've tested. Not completely infallible. Sometimes it had wobbles, but mostly it was good against the chest strap. The GPS has handled most of my runs really competently. One example I'll pull out here, the Comrade's official distance was 55.9 miles this year. I logged 56.41 on the 970. That's pretty good when you consider the allowance for weaving. It was also within 0.05 of a mile against the Fenix 8, so pretty spot on. When it comes to battery life, there's good and bad. The daily usage has dropped significantly. I got 4 days usage with just one GPS workout. That was when I had the always on screen on and the screen ramped up to full brightness. With those settings, the overnight burn was between 3 and 5%, which is pretty standard. A 1 hour run in max GPS burned 4%. A 9 hour ultra burned 39%. That's again around sort of 4% an hour. You can likely extend this by tweaking the settings, but I'm not 100% convinced that this watch will last a 30 hour ultra without dropping to quite a low GPS setting, and even then I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to test it though when I head out to Berlin to do the 100 miler soon.
So into those dislikes, and I will start with the fact that you need to spend more money on the Garmin HRM 600 to unlock all of the new metrics on the Garmin Forerunner 970, or some of the new metrics have been introduced. Now those are running economy and the step speed loss data, which is tied to running economy as well. Now, given how much the 970 already costs, and the fact it's gone up in price from the 965, and then you also now have to factor in buying a additional heart rate monitor test, a very specific one as well. I feel like it's a lot to ask, and I think almost maybe Garmin could have offered a bundle to ensure that people could make the best use of the kind of all available metrics on the 970, but it does add a considerable amount of cost on top of a watch that is already very expensive. On that running economy, just to note that it took a while for me to get that running economy data, despite kind of sticking to, the very specific kind of requirements to get that data. And I think it's very sensitive to the fact that you really need to be on very flat terrain to unlock those kind of running economy kind of insights. Another thing I want to talk about is battery life. Now, there is a drop off in battery life compared to the 965. The brighter display definitely has a part to play in that. I think, from an always on display mode particularly, I think it's most notable. And the last thing I want to talk about is what you're getting in terms of new smartwatch features. Now, you're getting that built-in microphone and speaker. And then you've got the kind of evening reports, which are kind of taking the good stuff that I think Garmin did with introducing the morning reports and giving you something later in the day to kind of give you a sense of what you've done, how that might influence, what you decide to do the following day. I feel like it just simply is a rehash of those morning reports, and I feel like maybe Garmin could have used that opportunity to do something slightly differently with the presentation. If the evening reports maybe offer some different information, which also you can customize, but I think it just feels like I don't feel it was as useful as the kind of morning reports that Garmin introduced more recently, or kind of in the last few versions of its watches. So I think great that there are more smart features, but I think in terms of the execution, what they're bringing to the day-to-day kind of experience of using the watch, I don't think personally it's offered me a lot more over my time with the 965.
Moving on to those sort of slightly negatives then, let's get straight to it with the price. This isn't just a little jump, it is a big leap that's definitely likely to dissuade some runners. If you've got a 965 already, I don't think I would recommend splashing out immediately to get this 970. If you're coming from an older watch and the funds stretch, it might be a different story, particularly if you want the shiny. But I think I'd still be thinking long and hard about whether or not I could make do with what the 965 offers in terms of how I would use it on my day-to-day running before investing the top dollar in the 970. I'm also not 100% convinced by the new running economy metric. It's not a sort of run-by-run readout, or the differences are so minimal they're hard to spot. You get sort of feeling of rather a sort of monthly average that seems to sort of update more monthly with the differences, and it feels like an arbitrary number in some ways. There's no guidance as to how to improve it. You know, we know that basically you need to increase volume, add some fast, do your strength training and drills. That's outside, but I'd like to see some more direct training guidance linked to the number to make it more useful. I certainly wouldn't pay extra to buy the heart rate chest strap to unlock that particular metric. Now, I don't tend to use sleep tracking beyond looking at what time I fall asleep and wake up to maintain sleep consistency. I think that's the most important metric of all. But I did spot the 970 also often failed to pick up naps, so that's one other little minor thing. And then finally, one other small thing, the strap here never sits flush for me. It's a minor irritation, but it's one I do notice a lot.
Dislikes start with the battery life on the Forerunner 970. Now, when we first had the watch in, the brightness was set quite high by default, and it was really draining quickly. Like, I was barely making it to 4 days, always on sometimes, running every day and that kind of thing. Now I've turned the brightness down on the screen during and outside of workouts. It does get to 5 days pretty reliably with the screen set to always on, and if you turn on raised awake like I've got it testing now, you are going to extend that battery life considerably, probably past 10 days, but it's still not great battery life for a top Garmin watch. This is one area where the Fenix 8 would be an upgrade, and actually the Forerunner 965 had longer battery life than that for me, primarily because I guess its screen is slightly less bright. So there's a few moves by Garmin in this direction lately with the Forerunner 970, the Venue X1, the battery life just coming down. It's not an area they seem to be focusing on so much in lots of their watches. There will still be the massive battery life watches in the range like the Enduro, but seems that the movement from the company is towards not worrying so much about having massive battery life, instead focusing on creating a better on-watch experience perhaps, but that obviously won't be to everyone's taste, and I did notice having to charge the Forerunner 917 more. Another dislike is that you do need the Garmin HRM 600 for some of these stats, the step speed loss stat, the running economy stat. Like, I don't think they're essential to really enjoying your experience of the watch. I'd say that now, having tested them. At first I was like, oh, you've got to get this accessory. I really want this running economy measurement, but it's okay. I don't think it's absolutely essential, but yeah, that's quite a significant extra cost and more on top of what is already an expensive watch, more expensive than the previous model. Prices going pretty crazy lately in the Garmin range, and having to then buy an accessory is a bit much, but I would say you don't really need it for those stats. They're not that essential, and the onboard heart rate sensor is very good, so I wouldn't necessarily worry about it too much. And then the last small dislike would be that there isn't a smaller size yet for the Forerunner 970. So if you want Garmin's best sports tracking features and all that in a watch, and you have a very thin wrist and you want a smaller watch, I think the only real option remains the smallest model of the Garmin Fenix. There are smaller models of the Garmin 570, but you're losing out on maps and some of the sports stuff on here, and it'd be really nice, I think, to have a smaller Forerunner 970 available in the range. So maybe with the next model we'll see that, but we haven't got it here.
Verdict then, and there's no doubt this is a hugely capable running watch. Beside the Fenix 8, you'll be hard pressed to find a better combination of the premium design and far-ranging tools. I've honestly loved using it. I like the wearability, I like the aesthetics, the customization and the usability for day-to-day running and training. It's a top quality device, but you will be asked to pay for that. Whether you think it's worth it for the brighter screen, the voice tools, the extra running features, will come down to personal choice. And this is one of those where my inner golem is drawn to the shiny new toy. It's a good watch. My sensible budget head tells me that the significantly cheaper 965 kind of does enough to cover most of my running needs. The other potential deal breaker for me is the daily and the GPS battery life. I worry that I might not be able to eke out a 30-hour ultra. I've been sport with watches like the Fenix and the Enduro and some of Coros's watches that don't need charging as often and can just do that single stint longer.
So my take on the Garmin Forerunner 970, and I think if you are looking for a top tier premium running watch, this is one of the best that you can buy right now from a design point of view, from a performance point of view, the kind of new metrics you're getting here. Yes, the battery life has dropped a little in places, but I think if you are willing to kind of use it in the raise to wake mode like I am, then I think you are going to get satisfactory levels of battery life. Now, in terms of the upgrades from the 965, now I am a long-term 965 user. What have been the real kind of notable gains? I think having that brighter display does feel like it does make a difference, and I do like the fact it is brighter. I do like the running tolerance metric. Now, we don't know if that's going to roll back to the 965. I think theoretically it probably could. It's not reliant on other kind of, or the additional kind of hardware accessories, the heart rate monitor that's needed for the running economy and the step speed loss metrics that is offered on the 970. And then also a personal one, but the fact that the screen protection is a little bit better. I did scratch the 965 when I was swimming, and that sapphire glass being added has, I think, been a nice thing to have, and just a little bit more comfort. There's going to be a bit more protection there. Now those features come at quite a considerable extra cost over the 965. Now I had to think about, if I had to put the 970 to one side, go back to using the 965, how bad would I feel about that? How sad would I feel about going back to 965? Actually, I think I'd be absolutely fine with it. I think that watch still offers a lot and will offer a lot to runners and what they want from a running watch. It's still a very good design, a good AMOLED display on there. The run tracking performance is still solid. The battery life in places is going to be better than it is on that brighter kind of 970 as well. And the metrics are good there as well. And the level of metrics you're getting on the 965, maybe we'll get some of those newer kind of insights rolling down to the 965. We might maybe just need to wait for them. So I do think if you can find the 965 at a good price, you don't feel that kind of massively kind of fussed about getting that LED flashlight, that extra screen protection, that brighter display, those kind of extra metrics, some which do rely on spending more money on a heart rate monitor test strap, and actually in some places losing a little bit of battery life. Then I think, absolutely look at the 965. Also, outside of the Garmin range, Suunto, Coros, Polar, they all offer good quality AMOLED watches that are feature packed. Maybe don't match or offer the same metrics that we're seeing now on the 970, but I think a lot of the kind of core kind of performance and battery life performance is all going to be there from a design that are going to be really likable as well. If you are willing to spend that money, you want the best of the best, particularly from a Garmin point of view, this is the watch to get. I don't think you should necessarily rule out the 965 either, particularly if it drops down in price.
So my verdict on the Garmin Forerunner 970, I think if money is no object, this is the best sports watch available for runners. I've really loved using it. Just everything about the experience of using it is really good. It's really easy to use. It's very accurate. There's a wealth of data available, including some interesting new features, and it's got a really good design that is lightweight and comfortable, but durable as well. I think the main competition for it, for the title of best running watch, would be the Garmin Fenix 8, which is a little bit more expensive, but it does have what is probably objectively a nicer design with the metal frame and that kind of thing, especially the orange Fenix 8, which I think is a really good looking watch. It's heavier, it's bulkier. I think as a runner, I probably prefer the sleeker feel of the Forerunner 970 myself. And now you have the flashlight and the sapphire crystal screen on there. Those would be the reasons I would previously maybe looked at the Fenix instead. So looking at a shootout between the two, the Fenix 8 does cost a bit more, but you're getting a nicer, more premium design, more durable design, longer battery life, but the Forerunner 970 is a bit cheaper and a bit lighter on the wrist. There are definitely some useful upgrades here compared to the Forerunner 965. Like, I think the design is better. Like I say, it's more durable. That screen is very important. The flashlight's very handy. That said, the Forerunner 965 is an amazing running watch and still will continue to be an amazing running watch. Garmin might not give it all the updates going forward, but what you have right now on the Forerunner 965 is still, an incredible feature set, and it's going to go for a lot less than the Forerunner 970 right now. So if you could even stick a screen protector on and not worry about that sapphire crystal upgrade, and you're going to get a really good watch for a lot less if you don't need all those latest features and aren't won over by this design upgrade. Another Garmin option you have now is the Venue X1, which comes in a similar price to the Forerunner 970. It's pitched a bit more as a sporty smartwatch rather than a full sports watch. It doesn't have dual band GPS, doesn't have some of these new running metrics you are getting on the Forerunner 970. It has even worse battery life, like 1-2 days max with the screen always on, that kind of thing. I think it's a really nice watch, a really nice design. I think I prefer the sportiness of the Forerunner 970 myself. Probably slightly prefer the circular design, although it's quite a close call. You have got this really nice 2-inch display on the Venue X1, and it's still a great sports watch, but for runners, I think you get more from the Forerunner 970. And then looking outside Garmin's range, there's some pretty good competition out there these days. The Suunto Race, even the Race S, are really nice looking watches with AMOLED displays and maps, and deliver a really good run tracking experience, especially paired to a heart rate sensor. I don't really like the optical sensors on the Suuntos. They don't seem to work for me very well, but you are getting more sports features on the Garmin, more depth of training analysis, better navigation features, better smart features. I think, it's a better watch, but the Suunto will come in a lot cheaper. It still does everything really well, has a slightly different design that some people might prefer. Polar Grit X2 is a nice little watch we've just started testing. Again, you're getting maps, some really impressive sports features all round, but I think the full package you get on the 970 is better in several areas in terms of the amount of features you get and the depth of those features, but you might not necessarily need all those features, and you might prefer looking at other brands, in which case there are some really good options there from Polar and Suunto. And then some other competition within the Garmin range comes from older watches, I guess, like the Garmin Epix Pro and even the Garmin Epix 2, which, the predecessors to the Fenix 8 AMOLED. They're a lot cheaper than the Fenix, but they still have a pretty comprehensive suite of fitness tracking tools, training analysis, nearly all of Garmin's best stuff. You're missing some of those new running stats on the Forerunner 970, but you are getting everything you need to have a very complete watch, and they're going to come in a fair bit cheaper than the 970 these days. It will have those metal designs as well. If you love the look of the Fenix 8 but don't want to spend the extra on it compared to the Forerunner 970, something like the Garmin Epix Pro will give you that look and that metal design in a watch that still has everything you need and more, basically, to be a very comprehensive running watch. And it will be cheaper than the Forerunner 970 as well right now, because they're significantly discounted, those older Garmins, whereas this is obviously not as a new watch. So yeah, all round, Forerunner 970 I think is the best running watch out there overall if you're not worried about price, but it's a very high price. There are definitely other options available from other brands, and the Fenix 8 is there, I think, as a better option if you prefer the look and feel and the all-metal design of the Fenix 8. I probably prefer the look and feel of the Forerunner 970 myself, and it's a little cheaper.
So there you have it. That's been our review of the new Garmin Forerunner 970. I hope you found it insightful. Give us a like if so, maybe a subscribe if you're not already. If you're interested in the Forerunner range, I'm going to pop a video up on the channel now that you should go and check out. Otherwise, until next time, thank you very much for watching. Happy running, people.